Is this just what we can expect from now on? This race is particularly interesting because the former president was basically punishing Good for endorsing Ron DeSantis for president. And Good also voted to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. So he had political enemies. And now his current colleagues are blasting him for claiming the election was stolen. Quote, "What a loser," said Representative Mike Lawler of New York. And of course, Bob is claiming election fraud. He's grasping at straws to help save his political career. That was Derek Van Orden of Wisconsin. Or how about blank Bob Good? Bob Good's a sore loser. Bob Good's full of blank, both attributed to House Republicans by Axios. And then there's the man who previously held the seat as a Republican, Denver Riggleman, who told Axios, quote, "I don't find it surprising that an election between an election denier and an election denier would end with one of them denying the election was fair based on conspiracy theories." But at least Good is consistent in his election denialism. He's one of the 147 Republicans who objected to certifying the electors on January 6th. Joining us now is Florida Congresswoman Laurel Lee, a Republican on the House Judiciary Committee, who is also running for re-election and formerly Florida's Secretary of State. So she knows a lot about the inner workings of elections. Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. So is this the norm now, that someone who loses just claims there was fraud?
Well, you make a good point. There is a big difference between a candidate, Mr. Good, or any other candidate, requesting a recount if their election result is within that margin of votes that their state law says prompts an eligible recount. And so that's something that's wholly appropriate for Mr. Good to exercise if he should choose to do so. There's an entirely different matter when we start talking about things like malfeasance or allegations that something contrary to law happened in a polling place. So, that's something that I think all of us, whether Republican, Democrat, any elected official or voter, have an obligation to be very careful and very circumspect about what we say and why. One thing I will point out, though, I think you said in your intro there that it was Republicans who had a tendency to do this. And I'll say, when I was Secretary of State the first 2 years, I sure heard from plenty of Democrats who had interest about cybersecurity and making sure that our vote tabulation was correct and that our 2016 result was something that they could count on and rely upon.
And I think that's fair, right? Cybersecurity is one thing, right? And having litigation before an election about what the rules ought to be, that's totally normal. But it's after the results come in, the complaining about, I was cheated, we need a recount. I mean, it does sound a lot like Donald Trump, no?
Well, one thing that we all need to be sure to do is to be clear about what we're saying. So, for example, we know we had election officials in 2020 who deviated from their state's election code. And that's something that I think is so critical to voter confidence, ensuring that every state and local election official knows what the rules are, they're telling their voters and their candidates what the rules are, and that they follow those rules all the way through the election. That's one thing that goes a really long way toward inspiring voter confidence. Another thing that I always say in Florida, we have mail voting, we have early voting, we have in-person voting, but regardless of the method, we require all ballots to be received by 7 o'clock on Election Day, except for our overseas military voters. And that is such a great step toward, we're the third largest state in the country, and we had results by 9 o'clock on Election night. And being able to settle the issue and tell the public, we know who won, this is how we know who won, just is so important in inspiring that voter confidence.
I agree with you, but I think that part of what takes away from that voter confidence is when people claim fraud after the fact when they don't really have any evidence of it, right? I mean, that's what Bob Good is doing. I mean, he's sort of making all sorts of claims, and that's what Donald Trump did. And I worry that this is what's going to happen in 2024 across the board.
Well, I think all elected officials need to understand that it is in our long-term best interest as a country and for our voters, for our people, for Americans, if we can all agree to be cautious, to be careful, and to be responsible about the way that we talk about elections. And these are complex issues. State laws vary. So what is the law in Florida is not the same as the law in Virginia. And so every time, whether it's an elected official, whether it's a media person, we all need to be sure that we are being responsible and careful and mindful about the information that we're sharing with the public.
I completely agree. Trump endorsed Good's opponent, McGuire, it seems as retribution for Representative Good's support of Ron DeSantis. He went after you at first for the same thing, for supporting DeSantis. A couple weeks ago, though, he endorsed you, and in a big endorsement. A number of Trump-endorsed candidates lost primaries last night. Do you think that the power of the Trump endorsement has faded?
Well, I can just speak to my district and tell you that it is incredibly important in my district. His endorsement matters so much to Republican voters. And so, the voters back at home, for me, that is still an incredibly important thing that they want to know about candidates that they're voting for. But really, at the end of the day, it goes back to the voters in the district, and every candidate is different, and the kinds of interests and issues that their voters want to hear about are different. So I know it was incredibly impactful in my case. I can assure you of that.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.